Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor, and with me, as always, is my dear friend, Phil.
Yo.
And Phil, we have a weekend off ahead of us.
Hooray!
A weekend off, which does mean, for those of you, I'll put a plug here right at the top. For those of you who do not listen to the MMA Vivisection, the weekly full card preview, full UFC card preview show that I do with Zane Simon, you can find that over on his Substack, I think. Fuck, where does it even come out? I'm just the co-host. It's like you trying to promote this show, Phil.
Wow.
You'd be like, I guess go on the internet.
Yeah, find it wherever you losers listen to it.
It's somewhere. But when it's a non-UFC week, we do the MMA Depressed Us, where we get to watch terrible, depressing fights. And so there will be one of those this week if you want to see us. I believe we're going to be reveling in the slow decay of Tony Ferguson's mortal body.
Cool.
That's Zane Simon's big idea. So actually don't listen to it. You know what? I'm going to cut this. Delete the plug. Don't listen to that. It's not going to be fun. You know what was fun? A bantamweight main event featuring two former champions that happened last weekend. I mean, call me crazy, but pretty quickly into this fight, I thought, this is actually better than Jones versus Miocic.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Just slightly.
Imagine if it wasn't, though.
Yeah.
Imagine if it hadn't been better than Jones Miocic. I would have been absolutely shocked.
Yeah. Literally every bantamweight fight should be better than Jones Miocic. If not, you're doing something wrong. Yeah, Zane and I were saying that this felt like one of those matchups where, with Figueiredo, I think it's more age and overall wear and tear. With Petr Yan, I think it's more confidence and technical issues that are really he's running into at this point in his career. He's still a relatively young man without a huge amount of experience behind him. But it does feel that both have, fallen from former glory. And this felt like a matchup where they had sort of both just equalized. Like, I think you would have gotten a higher quality version of this exact fight with this level of momentum swings and back and forth action and necessary adjustment if they'd fought each other 4 years ago.
Yes.
It just it would have been a little cleaner, But as it was, fantastic goddamn fight. I gotta say, I loved every minute of this main event. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was tremendous. I mean, I don't even know that it would have been cleaner. I mean, Figueiredo,
fair enough, yeah.
In particular, I think, is now someone who we've talked about how strategically weird he is.
Yeah.
And in terms of his development as a fighter and how it doesn't necessarily feel like it made a lot of sense for bantamweight. But, he just didn't have things like his wrestling game. 4 years ago. And yeah, Yan is harder. I think Yan was obviously incredibly complete from a disgustingly young age.
Yeah.
As a prospect. We were talking about Bo Nickel the other week to shit on him for his hubris. And yeah, you can look back at like where Petr Yan was and what he looked like as a fighter 4 years into his professional career, and you will be like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's been an outrageously complete fighter for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I mean, this was just the amazing fight that you kind of, would have, I think, always expected. I think, yeah, the main difference is that it was possibly, contested at a slower pace late than you might otherwise have.
Yes. Yeah.
Than you might have gotten if they'd fought in their prime. I mean, because from that, credit to them, I think both of these guys, there would be reason to think you might get a slow feeling out process in, rounds 1 and perhaps 2. But But no, I mean, they were both, clearly understood the assignment, were ready to go for it, like right from the opening bell.
The feeling out process was a series of like mind-bending scrambles. The fucking mat wrestling that took place in just the first minute of this fight was unbelievable.
Yeah. That was the other great thing about it was that, it was one of those fights that went everywhere.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. A little bit of everything.
Pound, transitional exchanges, striking. It was great.
Yeah, so paint the picture for me of this matchup. Obviously, things started out, a Figueiredo hit. I think he initially went for like a reactive double, and then he switched to a really nice inside trip out of the clinch, which just surprised Jan completely and put him on his back. Jan got like butterflies, elevated, created a scramble. They ended up in some kind of weird like reverse seatbelt position ride where Figueiredo orchestrated this. It was not, I mean, this really showed Figueiredo's grappling skill. This wasn't like a crazy constant explosion scramble, which he won through athleticism. He charted a very strange course to Petr Yan's back and got there and secured the position. Yeah.
It was actually once he got the back that he
ran out of ideas.
Jan was able to like find himself in more familiar territory and spin and reverse the position.
Yeah, Jan just clamped down on that like 2-on-1, so Figueiredo couldn't actually progress. But man, the back take was so cool, and the scramble that led to it was so cool. And then paint the picture for me. How did the rest of this fight sort of transpire? What stories did you see developing here?
So, I think the interesting thing was that obviously, we did. Figueiredo was going to be on the back foot, and Jan was going to be on the front foot for most of this fight. I think none of us, and that was true. None of us expected anything really different. Figueiredo has pressured, but not for a long time, and certainly not really at bantamweight unless he's pushing the issue at some point. He's trying to scare the guy off, or he thinks that they're hurt, and he's rarely going after people these days. He's mostly doing his, Henry Cejudo, rangy distance control impression. And the main difference now, as we saw, is that he spices it up with counter takedowns as well. And Jan was going to be the one pressuring and looking to kind of break him down. And I think there were two sort of obvious stories of this fight, two stories of this fight. Like the first one was the way that Jan just like quickly keyed on into the uppercut as a way to like get in past Figueiredo's like extended lead hand. But I feel like the weirdest thing about this fight, from my perspective, was that like Jan, as the ostensibly pressuring fighter, over time, increasingly just looked to mirror Figueiredo's stance.
Yeah.
Like, it was what was nominally like a pressuring performance, but, open stance is almost always used by people who want to fight from the outside. Yeah. Like, it's people who are stance switchers who are always going open stance. It's normally if you're, a Wonder Boy or a Anthony Pettis.
Right.
And you want to just have the maximum distance between you.
Easier to penetrate in a closed stance when you're both in the same stance.
But yeah, like so often, I think it really started to come through in like rounds 3 and so on. Jan would sit there and he would like, within every time Figueiredo changed stances, Jan would just mirror him.
Yeah.
And go back to open stance. And he was kind of masking his entries with the stomp to the lead leg, and then coming inside and just swinging the uppercut to the body or the head, like whichever happened to present itself as just the like center of mass. So yeah, it was a really, I mean, we talked about how Figueiredo's approach to bantamweight has been counterintuitive. This was like a really strange pressuring performance from Petr Yan. But yeah, one that worked like
totally
really well.
And it certainly, I mean, I think, look, we expected Petr Yan to win. Mm-hmm. Petr Yan did win, and in some respects looked very good. I think because of all that, this is Jan's division. It feels like this is a bit of a status quo result.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like most of my focus is going to be on continuing to sort of like build the picture of where Jan is at, what place Jan is at in his career right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I did find this a strange performance from Petr Yan. I actually didn't pick up on him deliberately trying to mirror Figueiredo that much. I'm sure it happened. What I noticed mostly was that this was a southpaw fight from Petr Yan. I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe because of all the lead leg kicking he planned to employ. But he was in southpaw for a lot of this fight. And that is not... I mean, as far as I know, Jan switches stance all the time. I think he's an orthodox fighter, like, naturally.
I mean, he is very good in. He's one of the better switch hitting fighters who can actually box from either stance. There's a lot of fighters who are just like visibly worse in one or the other. I think he is genuinely very good. I mean, a big part of the Aldo fight when his leg was getting kicked off was that he just went southpaw and he was just like, oh yeah, I'm actually really good at this. I'm really good southpaw as well.
Yeah. Do you think that might explain though why, despite this frequently being at a long range, a range which really probably kind of favored Figueiredo, or was at least the range he wanted, did the stance thing, the apparent preference for southpaw, either that or the preference for an open stance alignment, did that hamper Petr Yan's jab, or has it always been this non-existent?
Yeah, because that's the other thing that comes out of all this, right? This was a dick measuring swang and bang fight. Petr Yan.
Yeah.
Like, because
by the end,
fighting either southpaw or mirroring or whatever. Like, it's rear hand time.
Yeah, and by the end, Figueiredo was kind of up for it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be honest, rounds 4 and 5, I was like, Figueiredo got hurt earlier, but now he's just eating shots willingly like he used to. And just like wading in and landing bombs, like it really reminded me of pre-championship Figueiredo. He kind of found that mode as the fight wore on. Once he realized he could take Jan's power, and also I think he stopped being surprised by everything Jan was doing, except the uppercuts, which consistently worked throughout the entire goddamn fight. But I mean, I either here or on the Vivi last week, I did make note of the fact that Petr Yan, one of his major limitations, and I think while there are clearly, to me, confidence issues and other things connected to this, the germ of Petr Yan's apparent decline is his total lack of a range game.
Yeah.
100%. That's it, right? Like, when he fought Corey Sandhagen, he was losing that fight until he recognized that he had to just break through and hang out in the pocket and extend the exchanges there. He was losing up to that point. And it was a huge part of the early difficulty he had with Aljamain Sterling in their first fight. And it probably would have helped against Merab Dvalishvili to have, like, a jab or some feints, something that I noticed in particular were lacking from this fight. Just things to keep command of the kind of rhythm and pace, in the flow of the fight from range. And also ways to enter and dictate from that range, to create opportunities. Petr Yan does not really have this game. By which I mean Petr Yan...
I think he does, but it's very... It's surprisingly janky for how fluid the rest of his game is.
Yeah, he flows like a motherfucker in the pocket, but he's quite awkward when it comes to like closing the distance or like fencing people at distance.
Yeah. So like a lot of that open stance entry game that he sort of came to, it's really reminiscent of Lando Venata.
Yes, totally. Absolutely.
It's because the whole thing is based around disguising the step in that you are taking to close distance, right? So he raises his leg, and what is he going to do? He's going to stamp your knee. He's going to step in, and sometimes he will step in past you, and he will throw he'll throw like a right hook, and then he'll do that cute trip that was, making the rounds on Twitter afterwards. But yeah, it's like
the Osotogari.
It's the entry is like using the knee as the fake to get inside.
Yes, a tie style feint entry.
Yes, and. Yeah, and like clearly he wanted to do this more and more. He's like moved away from the idea of jabbing into the pocket completely.
Yep.
And I just decided like, yeah, if I do this, it's really getting to this guy, and it's opening up the uppercut for me. Occasionally, yeah, I'm sort of. I mean, that thing where he just stamps he turns as he comes in and stamps his foot between the opponent's legs and so on, and then, hopefully they're turned to the side and then he can deliver the uppercut, or he can trip them back over their own leg. That is one of those things where, like, someone with a nasty pull counter might just kill you for that.
Yeah, because Piotr Jan himself is ending up in an awkward position as he enters with this side kick. Yeah. Even Muay Thai, I called it a Thai style entry. Thai fighters are usually feinting a teep, so they're kind of still at least staying on line. The side kick really turns you side on as you get into the pocket, which, you're not hopeless in such a position, but it's not really a prime punching position either. But why? We know the jab works against Figueiredo. We saw those Brandon Moreno fights. It actually works spectacularly well.
The jab is clearly not used. I mean, the lead hand isn't used for jabbing. It's used for measuring distance.
God. Piotr, buddy.
Mean, this is again, an example of the way that fighters age. And we've talked about this before, I think, is that you lose your ability to pounce on opportunities.
Yeah.
But you also, a lot of fighters lose their ability to be like confident in small victories, like the jab. And if you're fighting someone who's very, very scary, like Davison Figueiredo, whilst this was, as I said, it was like a brave sort of dick measuring kind of competition, but it was also like if I'm going to punch this guy, it had better be worth it.
Yeah.
Fight from Piotr Jan. And again, I think that does speak to the fact that his confidence is not quite what it was.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt, since you brought it up, and I know I carped about this a bit, after the Song Yadong fight. The fucking Piotr Jan long guard, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, people, I know there's like some people I like and respect who talk about this. You know what it makes me feel like? And look, I obviously like and respect Jack Slack too. But back when Junior Dos Santos was riding high, I remember Jack wrote a piece where he talked about the rainbow overhand, and he called it like a ridge hand strike.
Mm-hmm.
He was, because like that's a thing. It was, and that is how he was landing. He was throwing an overhand badly and landing with the thumb, which you're not supposed to do. But he was like, well, actually in karate, there's this technique where you hit with the back of the thumb. And I'm not saying that's not that's a hard bone to hit somebody with, sure. And And boxers even hit with various parts of the fist, even including the thumb, particularly if you're wearing gloves and your hands are well wrapped. Sometimes it does damage and it doesn't hurt you. But it is like legitimizing something which is simply bad. To be like, actually, Junior Dos Santos is doing a smart thing when he flies off balance and tries to pull a star down from the sky en route to hitting his opponent with the wrong part of his fist. And that's how I feel about other people I like and respect talking about this fucking long guard. I know you watch like Muay Thai and stuff and you see this. It is not legitimate the way that Petr Yan uses it. Do not legitimize it, please, because it gets him into more trouble than it gets him out of. Against Song Yadong, it made it incredibly easy for Song Yadong to pressure him. And at a certain point in this fight, Figueiredo not only started to get more pressure, he also realized that as long as Petr Yan is doing this, he can just throw a free, full-powered shot to any target he wants. And even if it doesn't yield results, he's not going to get punished. Look at the guy. Both of his hands are out. He's not ready to nail me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Figueiredo found the right uppercut to the body, that became his money punch for the rest of the fight, which was a period of like 10 minutes. I think he maybe found that in round 4. And my God, every time Yan took a step back, nothing to keep Figueiredo at bay, nothing to threaten him. Not even like just same time counters. I would have been happier if he would have just thrown bombs with Figueiredo. But no, just sticking the hands out. You're short, dude. You're not John Jones. You sticking your hands out doesn't actually stop the guy from getting close. It also leaves you impotent offensively and wide open defensively. What is the point of this long guard? I hate it. It doesn't work. I think it gets him into trouble. I think it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree, and it's another one of those things where like this was it was both a statement fight where Yan was able to say, this is my division and I'm still the still a potential title challenger and all this other kind of stuff, and it's an exciting fight. It gets him to put his name back in the conversation, and Merab Dvalishvili shamefully was like, yeah, I want to fight Petr Yan next.
Petr did call him out by name. He did mention his name.
Yeah. And as well he should. And I was actually genuinely happy to see that, because I was like, okay, maybe Merab didn't break him after all.
Or at least he knows when it's time to face his demons.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I was like, there's making a statement and there's making a statement. And being taken down within seconds.
Yeah.
And also having your primary entry be like standing on one leg.
Mm-hmm.
And turning your side to the opponent, and also just committing really hard to every single punch that you throw.
And also the real problem that got him in trouble in Merab being way too reactive and not active or insisting on holding the initiative enough. Like that's another part of this long guard shit is like, what are you doing floating around at long range, backpedaling? Like, don't you understand, man? You got to get into the pocket. That's where you kill these people. You got to flow in the pocket and you got to break them down. You have to put pressure on them. Yeah.
So an inability to be proactive without being incredibly committal.
Yeah.
And, you're just like, I'm sure Merab would much rather fight you than Umar.
Yeah.
At this point.
Pretty much the statement he made was, look, I'm still pretty good, but I'm not beating Merab. Yeah. I don't want to be down on it. I mean, like, the fight was fantastic.
I mean, he's still, sensationally violent. He's still an incredible transitional fighter.
Yep. His grappling was on full display too. Like, again, we got to see a really early example of just how good Figueiredo's actual positional game is on the ground. And Yan just navigated it with great defense, stayed very calm, ultimately won the position, and then did more damage when he got on top. So like we got to see every aspect of Yan's incredibly deep game. But I think we also saw yet more very compelling evidence of why this like isn't working as well as it used to.
Yeah. In some ways, this was more of a referendum fight than like the O'Malley one was.
Right. Yeah.
Because with the O'Malley one, you're like, at least that dude is huge.
Yeah.
And closing range on him is, by having to have a committal plan. A committal plan for closing range is something you literally have to have in some ways on Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
There's physically no way around it. The same is not really that true of Davis and Figueiredo, and certainly not to this extent.
Right.
Petr Yan is no really different frame-wise to like Brandon Moreno.
Right. Well, so, shorter of arm.
Yeah. But not to an extent that would require a different game plan.
Right.
If he wanted to jab Figueiredo up, he could. So yeah, the idea that he's gonna fight Merab and that he's gonna beat him by just bashing him as hard as he can.
Yeah.
I ain't seeing it.
He's gonna beat him with rage and resentment and contempt. I mean, he's got plenty of all those things, but I don't think it's gonna do the trick. Yeah, the thing is, man, sometime I should do a whole retrospective on Jans. He has had a fascinating career in the UFC. And some of these problems most of this I think was already there the whole time. When we first, evoked the ire of the Jan heads, it was because we were constantly talking about how Jimmy Rivera pretty much beat him.
Yep.
How yes, Jimmy Rivera deserved to lose the decision, but aside from those knockdowns, man, he had Petr Yan's number. That was our read on that fight. And I know we've talked about this before. Those fight-saving knockdowns from Petr Yan, same shit. Yep. That we're seeing really limiting Yan now. Where's the range game? There is none. Just leap in with a bomb. Or two bombs. Wild overhand, huge left hook. And if he reacts badly to your just sheer commitment and ferocity, the second punch is going to nail him when he's out of position. That was pretty much Jan's way back into that Rivera fight on at least two occasions.
Yep, the two occasions that really, really mattered.
That won the fight, yeah, was just to surge across open space with a massively committed punch. So even then, it's he wasn't solving Rivera from the range where Rivera was beating him.
No.
He sort of had to cheat his way through it. And please don't get all up in arms. I'm not saying he's a cheater. Somebody actually said, because we were talking about Michael Chandler, I hate to say somebody because it's a long-time listener, but the name is not on my tongue right now, that we should have mentioned Petr Yan.
Yeah.
Because he's got one of the most historically, influential fouls. I mean, it really will go down having shaped his entire career and much of the future of the division, that knee on Sterling. But I don't think it was a foul in that way. I think Petr Yan had no notion that what he was doing was not allowed.
Yeah.
I think he just didn't know the rules.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying Petr Yan is a cheater. Even his most blatant foul, I don't think was really a deliberate foul. What I'm saying is there are and always have been gaps in Petr Yan's game, and he will kind of try to smudge his way across them rather than actually having ever invested the time in developing a consistent skill set from that range. And this, I really noticed this when Yan was pressuring, no jabs, but also where were his feints? Where were his setups? It was he still had the idea that he could lash in with something and then add another layer to it. And that would be effective because Figueiredo's defense is dog shit. But that's not really a setup. That's not I've sent a feint and you did nothing, so now I step in with the jab, and now I feint the jab again, and now you bite, and so now I get to set up a shot. This allows me to close the distance or whatever. It's just flying in furiously with some savage attack. There wasn't a lot of subtlety to this version of Yan. And I do think there used to be more. I think he used to be a lot more willing with his jab, a lot more comfortable with the feint. That, I believe, is tied to the age or confidence or whatever. that he used to just be chilling on the edge of range and in the pocket. And he doesn't feel that
the Aldo and Sandhagen fights.
Yeah.
Much jabbier. Although, maybe that Sandhagen fight in particular was just the one where he was just like, you know what?
Yeah.
Why am I even bothering with this jab stuff?
His solution there, it turned out, but not all these dudes are Corey Sandhagen.
Yeah.
That's the guy, like maybe, you're just not going to beat him at range. You got to crash through and it doesn't matter how you do it. But then you get to this and you've had some hard losses and, we're in danger of underrating how good Figueiredo still is at this stage in his career. I think it's pretty clear that he's nowhere near done. But still, it's kind of a blank canvas matchup for Petr Yan. He gets to spend a lot of time just hanging out at a pretty safe range. There's so much leeway to set Figueiredo up for anything he wants and to spend the rest of the fight building on that. And instead it felt like he hit on a couple good ideas and that was about it. He just kind of had to keep hammering away at them. And meanwhile, Figueiredo was the one who was like finding new openings as the fight went on, and suddenly it got really hard for Yan at the very end. He couldn't break him. He couldn't control him, couldn't keep the lid on him.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that...
That's the other thing to be concerned about with Yan is that it's difficult to tell how much it is a product of him entirely throwing heaters the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
But he's definitely looking way more knackered than he used to back in the day.
Totally, yeah.
He always used to. I mean, and it's not like this was a more torrid pace than the fights he used to have.
No, it didn't pick up until the last 2 rounds is when it was pretty relatively constant action. There were a lot of lulls early.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Wagner, who is one of the people who have propagated the long guard myth, but just to show how much I do like Ryan Wagner, he was posting a clip from the fight, which was just both of these guys switching stance in front of each other back and forth for 10 seconds straight.
Yep.
It's like a cat that couldn't decide if it wanted to go out or come in. 2 cats.
Yes.
So yeah, there was a lot of that in this fight, and he definitely was still tired by the end. I just think he seems tense still. He just doesn't seem comfortable to me. And I think it's affecting his decision making, and that is as much a problem as anything else.
Yeah. And I don't really know where there is to go for him at this point, because I'm assuming he's just going to wait around until, it would be absolute bullshit if somehow he got a shot over Umar.
I got an idea.
But yeah, I'm assuming they're just going to keep him around and he'll get next to whoever wins that fight.
I got an idea. Aldo rematch.
Ooh, I thought I was the glue factory guy.
Now's the time. I think Yan may have caught up to Aldo is why I'm suggesting it. I think he might have. Aldo's one of those guys who just can like John Jones. He could just wait for people to age up to his level.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be a different fight this time. If Jan's not going to pressure him and break him, what does that fight look like now? If he takes the approach he took here to Figueiredo, I think it's a winnable fight for Jose, and I think it would be a great fight.
Amazing.
Go for it.
I respect your combination of cynicism and hope.
Yeah, because I agree with you. Like, Aldo doesn't have any direction in his division either.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's nothing else to do, I'd be happy to see that.
Yeah. I still have the bad memories of
course, yeah.
Aldo receiving an absolutely horrific beating.
I'm not asking for him to rematch Max. All right, I think Max is still too good. But Yan with sort of holding his hands in his lap, looking shy Yan. That's what we should call this iteration. Bashful Yan. I think Aldo's got a chance.
Oh, yeah, as long as it's only 3 rounds.
3 rounds, by God, yes.
3 rounds. No more protracted 4th round beatings, thank you.
So yeah, just the last word is to reiterate that this was a great fucking fight. This is one of the best main events of the year.
100%.
All right. On that note, let's take a break. When we come back, Yan Xiaonan, various other things from this Macau undercard after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about the co-main event of this UFC Macau fight night. We had Yan Xiaonan just recently fought for the women's strawweight title against Weili Zhang. She took on Tabitha Ricci, a small, like, dark horse favorite of Zane's, in fact. Don't know why.
Does she smoke?
Yeah, it's got to be some cultural signifier for Zane. Obviously, that's what matters to him. Yeah, I don't know. I think he just Zane is a slightly more basic version of the guy that I am, which is he likes his underdog strivers as much as I do, but he's picking like underdog strivers he thinks really have a chance physically. So for him, he looks at Ricci and she's like, yeah, her game sucks, but she's athletic and she's young. I think she might become good. It's lame.
Yeah, I think that's it's just the prospect hunter in him, isn't it?
That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. That's what they call him at the nightclub. The prospect hunter is
also, they used to call him at the nightclub before they barred him.
Yeah. That's what the poster of his face at the nightclub calls him. Do not allow in the prospect hunter. Ricci got absolutely clowned by Yan Xiaonan. In fact, while I think we saw the limits of Yan Xiaonan's sort of vibe here, I think we saw the extent of the sort of facade of a total swagger and confidence she was putting on here. I do think, man, she looked like she was feeling good after about that Weili Zhang performance. Because this was a particularly sharp, imposing, like down to counter and scare the fuck out of her opponent in the pocket, Yan Xiaonan. And she didn't know how to move past that. It got a little frustrating as the fight went on, but man, was she completely in control of this fight from the very beginning.
Yeah. Conversely, what was Tabitha Ricci's plan?
Good question. Yeah. I mean, that was half the frustration of this fight. It was like, yeah, I wanted Yan Xiaonan to do more as it went on, but also like Tabitha Ricci is not really giving her much. She's like, trying to stand 6 feet away and just sort of like trying to individually block all the strikes that are coming her way and getting hit by 60% of them. I have no idea what her plan was.
Yeah.
She said she worked on her...
like her sense of distance just got very quickly shattered by Xiaonan's ability to counterpunch. And then she was just like, what?
That's it.
Just gonna blow some leads here. Blow some leaves and hope that something happens.
Yeah, the commentary did mention, she said she had been working on her inside boxing game in this camp.
Oh, cool.
Which we got to see a lot of.
Yeah.
That seemed like a short-sighted focus for the training camp, if that was really the focus, because more important than an inside boxing game, and this relates to our previous discussion, Phil, tools that get you inside. That's a pretty important.
Yeah, was that inside boxing game mostly used against ghosts?
Yeah, well, what she means is inside her head. I've been working on boxing my own demons. I'm almost ready to have that conversation with my father. That's what she meant. That's her inside boxing game. Yeah. So she just had no range tools at all and just almost immediately fell into a totally passive, reactive, the opposite of initiative sort of state where Yan Shannon really could just have her way with her.
Yeah. But yes, Yan Shannon was also like much too good to get into any trouble.
Yeah.
Against Ricci, but also like much too flat-footed and slow to actually create exchanges of her own.
And she caught
on her own initiative either, because Ricci was sort of circling on her bike most of the time, and you could just see Jianan just turning to face her and turning to face her, and then eventually they'd be in range, and Jianan would just crack her with a 1-2. I mean, there are really not many people in this division at this point that I would pick to be able to win this kind of fight with Yan Jianan.
No, totally not. Yeah, no. She was already coming into her own as a striker well before the Weili Zhang fight. And like I said, and probably like fighting in China was part of it too. Like her confidence was riding very high, but you could feel it. I mean, she had every reason to be that confident. I think she's the best striker in this division.
Yeah. I think at this point, she definitely is. I mean, you know, there might be people who can do individual things better than her, but she's big. She can keep a pace. She's got pop now.
Yep.
She can punch in combination and she can jab. That's it.
She hits the body too. A lot of right hands to the body in this fight.
Yeah.
Pretty full package. All the basics you would ask for from an MMA striker. The other thing though is that I saw is that she sort of ran out of ideas.
Yeah.
Part of that was, again, Ricci bringing absolutely nothing to the table. It's a lot easier to generate ideas with a partner, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't being given much to work with. All the same, much like Petr Yan, at a certain point, and in this case, pretty fucking quickly into the fight, Yan had a blank canvas to work with. And if you're leading your opponent around by the nose, you've got him biting on everything. You have all the initiative in the fight. If you cannot build towards a finish, I'm not saying you have to finish somebody, but like I think of Ian Gary, Neil Magny, and I think you could look at something like that from two perspectives. At the time, I said, Neil Magny was at least building to something, so it's fine. I'm not gonna hate on him too much because he was progressing through the beatdown in stages. If there was another round, he would have finished Neil Magny.
Yep.
At the same time, I think you can look at that fight from Gary and look at other opponents of Neil Magny's and be like, why didn't Ian just knock him out? Like, you couldn't build a little faster. In this case, I don't think anything was being built. I think the whole structure that won this fight was built before the fight started. These are all the tools that are going to keep Tabitha Ricci out of your grill, that are going to punish her for trying to close the distance. Then we need to build something. Now the fight is in control. And that was where I think Yan Shannon kind of fell down. Where's the double jab? Where's the, there's so much variety with just the 4 punches she was showing.
Yeah.
Different orders that you can put combinations together, different feints in different spots between those punches of the combination, like changing up the timing, changing up the intensity. There's a million ways to shape a set of 4 or 5 punches to come up with like an endlessly permutating attack. And Yan Shannon did not necessarily do that. She just kind of sat there and continued to win.
Yeah, definitely one of those ones where, like, on the one hand, you can't super criticize someone for winning really easily and just continuing to win, especially when they are coming off a loss. She is coming off a loss, right?
Yeah. Weili Zhang, it was her last fight.
Literally just her last fight. And yeah, it's obviously on Ricci to make something happen.
Yep.
But yeah, still, it didn't make for the most thrilling experience to watch. And yeah, normally you want to be able to find answers even when your opponents aren't actually posing real questions for you. You
Right.
still want to be able to because everyone can be a threat. As,
Right.
for example, Cong found out.
Yes. Yeah. They say in chess, Phil. I don't know if you, I'm actually kind of into chess now. Have you heard about this?
What? Really?
Yeah. And, I've been learning a couple things about it. It's just been a minute now. What they say in chess, Phil, is that the most difficult skill to learn is to convert a winning position. That there's a difference. This is why chess gets compared to combat sports, because it is one of those games where you can be winning, but you can also win definitively. Game's over.
Yep.
That doesn't happen in most sports. It doesn't happen in a foot race or a baseball game or soccer or whatever. You can't just suddenly win and now you've done it. You have to wait till the end. And so yeah, there's a difference between winning and getting the win, ending the fight. And Yan Xiaonan, and I think a lot of developing MMA fighters just struggle, like chess players, to get past that phase. Like, okay, I can feel I'm winning. I'm in control. The opponent's not touching me. I'm keeping them at bay. Now how do I win the fight? That's the next question. And it's understandable to me that it is a real question for fighters. Like, it's not intuitive. You have to experience it and practice it a lot. And I'm not hating on Yan Xiaonan. I thought it was a good performance, as you said. I just think these are also things, like with Ian Gary, to keep in mind going forward. Some little kernels.
And like the Yan fight, it's another one where you're like, sure, you won this. You were expected to.
Yeah.
Didn't make me feel super good about your chances of beating the person who just comprehensively out-wrestled you last time, because all the flaws that were present are still very clearly present.
Yeah. You clearly wanted to talk about Wong Kong. I ruined your segue. Let's return to that segue. What did you make of the Joker's sophomore effort?
I mean, this was nothing particularly. There's nothing particularly like significant about it. It's just a classic prospect loss.
Yep.
It's just her whooping up on someone and getting very, just really feeling her oats, and then just getting stunned and tapped out. I mean, it's just the most classic kind of MMA prospect loss you can possibly have.
Pretty much, yeah. I gotta say, Gabriela Fernandes is a very frustrating fighter for me, because I think she just is like winning and winning and winning in the UFC, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
This is like, what, her fourth or something? No, she had that loss to Teresa Bleda and the loss to Jasmine Jasudavicius. And her game just she seems like a very aimless fighter to me. Mm-hmm. But she's also like well-rounded enough that I look at her and I just think this could be shaped into something really practical. And yeah. I just get the sense right now that she's one of those fighters who is always going to have a completely like unstructured game with no process to it.
Yeah, she is a version of like the athletic, a very sort of Brazilian regional stereotype of someone who's just a mixture of like weird finishing skills. Like,
right.
She's got power on the feet. She's got no boxing. She's like a dynamic submission threat. She has absolutely no wrestling game. Like,
yep.
If you can watch her like takedown attempt in the first round, which was just to lower her shoulder and just walk at Wong Kong, expecting her to fall over.
Hey, sometimes it works.
So yeah, it's probably just going to be on the spectrum of the guys. Who are the Marajo brothers, the Alcantaras? Like, she's just going to be like that, just a bag of weird tricks and athleticism for her entire career.
Mm-hmm. So, hey, classic prospect loss. It will be funny if, like, the UFC has gotten away with this multiple times now. Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira. Working these, like, decorated strikers up the ranks, and there's got to be something where strikers are. There's got to be like a well-developed packet of things you have to learn. There's a 6 months of sprawl training packet for strikers now where I think they just seem to adapt to the sport better across the board than they used to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
But part of it is the matchmaking, and the UFC has really gotten very lucky that, like, Alex Pereira didn't just get, like, out-wrestled by Bruno Silva or whatever.
Yeah.
So it is also kind of satisfying to see this. To see the chaos get one over the UFC's best laid plans. They're like, nah, actually Shevchenko's going to be too old to fight by the time Wong Kong gets there. Sorry. You're not going to be able to fabricate another kickboxing rematch in the octagon.
Watch what kind of absolute scrub she gets next time, though.
Oh, yeah. No, they're going to build her back. Yeah, they know how to do that now, sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Never used to happen. Now in the UFC, you do actually get taken care of a bit. If you're, important.
Yeah. But then if you fail the second time, then they will just start giving you the most merciless matchmaking they can, because they'll be angry with you.
Yeah, you'll be torn apart by rabid dogs for your crimes. Yes. So let's take one more break. On that note, when we come back, a couple other ones to discuss. I doubt there's very much to say about Muslim Salikhov's KO, but we are going to exclaim about it. Carlos Ulberg fought Volkan Oezdemir, and that might be it. But we will cover that and anything else that comes to mind after this break.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, as promised, Muslim Salikhov is a god. He got a crazy knockout. That's all.
Yeah, that's it.
I do like Muslim Salikhov. He's 40 years old. He has had an incredibly long combat sports career because he was kickboxing for ages before he ever got into MMA. And just out of curiosity, how many years has he been doing MMA? His pro
a long-ass time at this point.
A long time, yeah. His pro debut, 2006.
Wow.
And I think he was doing both on and off for quite a while there. But he fought quite a bit up until like 2015. And after that, he's been basically on the exact schedule he's on right now, fighting twice a year, more or less. Very long career, 40 years old. And I actually was quite happy for him. He started his kickboxing career in China. He was a Sanda champion.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see him get to go back to China. He had a little Chinese phrase that I think he learned phonetically for the post-fight interview. It was like a little homecoming for Muslim Salikhov. And a really tremendous win at this point, so late in his career.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the ones where you're like, I would like to see you retire now, because that would be great. That would just be a great capper.
Yeah, he doesn't want to, though. He likes it.
But it's... welterweight is also a division with many old people who are not... who were skilled enough that getting old has not, like, completely obliterated them.
Right. And it's
so
also...
they can, if they so wish, match him up appropriately.
Exactly, yeah. Which they've been doing for a while now. I mean, he's just kind of a mid-card action fighter, and that's fine. I think he seems happy in that role, and he's good at it.
Yep.
Welterweight is also right at the cutoff, or like lightweight is so deep that if you pick a matchup at random, you're liable to get someone that'll kill you. Welterweight is closer to lightweight in size than any of the other heavier divisions, just roster size.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not lightweights. So there's like enough chaff on offer throughout the middle of the division to keep a guy like Salikhov fed.
Yeah. And, like, Ponzinibbio, like, Song Kin-hon, they're just not, they're pretty solid fighters.
Yeah.
Like, these aren't bad wins. He's not mopping up on scrubs.
Right. Yeah. No, he's still got it. There's a style that Salikhov loses to. I mean, this is the crazy thing. At his age, he's still really consistent in style matchups.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to go into a fight and be like, okay, Salikhov it's going to be close and he has a good chance of winning. Maybe he'll knock somebody out spectacularly because he's done it quite a bit throughout his career. And then there's other matchups like Nicholas Dalby. You're like, he's going to lose.
Yeah. Pace, range, potency.
Right.
All of these kind of things you can, just like a functional wrestling game. You can count on a lot of these things to come out on top against him. But,
lots of pace and pressure,
give him like a relatively slow-paced striking fight.
Yeah.
Where the guy isn't both big and fast, and he'll probably win.
Pretty much. Which brings us to the last fight I think we are going to bother to discuss here. Carlos Ulberg versus Volkan Oezdemir. Ulberg working his way up to contention. Oezdemir, Salikhov style, hanging out in this position basically without moving one way or the other for the last, 5 years now? 3 years, 4 years? And so this was a big sort of a crossroads proving matchup, I think, for Carlos Ulberg. And what did you take away from it? Now that he's a contender now, so what do we think about Ulberg?
I mean, as far as light heavyweights go,
light heavyweights,
he's pretty good.
Light heavyweights, Phil, please. I won't allow slander on this podcast.
I did say light heavyweights. Did it not come through?
Oh, that's a great excuse.
I mean, I wouldn't think that Volkan Oezdemir was a heavyweight.
That's a great excuse. He's got the mic on cover now.
Mm-hmm.
He can say anything as long as whatever slur he pronounces could conceivably part of a longer word. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I still look, Ulberg was checking some low kicks. Great. He was finding some counters. Great. He was using his footwork, and there were times when he was pivoting and sticking Oezdemir with the jab. I thought, this man can box. And then, as always, there are times where he is, I think Ulberg really, he just does too much. Like, even when he's doing nothing, I'm not talking about his pace is too high. I mean, he overthrows, he overcommits to his steps. He's a little too tightly wound for me to feel very confident in him right now, because I think he has the requisite skills. I think he has the right ideas, how to catch and pitch with the counters, how to roll undershots, everything. How to use his jab to set things up, whatever. He just needs to take his foot off the gas a little bit, because a lot of the exchanges here that were hairy were largely hairy because Ulberg would get himself into a position where he was like flailing. Really ropey, whipping his big, tall frame around everywhere. And I'm sure you hit hard enough. You do not have to try to throw with that much power at light heavyweight. I'd love to see him just settle down and drop clean punches down the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, as you said, like the few times when he was just decided to jab Oezdemir up, it was just like effortless free damage for him.
Yeah. There was also, however, a lot of them exchanging jabs, and this is a message to Ulberg, Oezdemir, and every other MMA fighter on the planet, practically. Look, I get that you are anxious about slipping jabs, and I don't think a slip should be your first recourse for a jab anyway, because a jab is there to set you up. And so if you commit to anything, you better be sure they don't have a follow-up. So yeah, Ulberg's not slipping jabs. Most MMA fighters are not out here regularly slipping jabs. And I get that. You're worried about kicks, etc., and just all the huge variety of offense that might come your way to punish you for committing to a weird position like that. In that case, why not put your right hand in front of your mouth so that you don't get hit with the jab? What is with these MMA fighters just hanging their right hand by default at their chest? I'm not a hands up guy, Phil. You know this. But your right hand should be ready to defend your chin. Lead hand gets leeway. That one can be extended. It can hang low. It can cover the body. You know, there's a lot of flexibility in your lead hand that it can be more useful, not in a tight guard position. Right hand should be next to your chin. No exceptions. And one of the main reasons is that it's there to catch and parry jabs. So that you can keep your eyes on the opponent, know you're not going to get hit, and stay in position so they're not setting you up for anything. It is the best way, other than just not being in range, to deal with a jab, is to catch it. And that's another thing, like, Ulberg, I don't know. I think he's a little lost in the sauce. He's a little too high on his own, like, I'm out here swaggering, hands hanging low. And then you see Oezdemir come in with like a left hook, and he just gets, Oezdemir hit him with a ton of left hooks in this fight. Ulberg landed a lot of them too. It's his favorite punch, but, and it was just cause he would just like get sent back by a feint, go running backwards, and his right hand would simply not be defending his chin. So that's another critique I would have for young Mr. Ulberg as he goes forward. Catch jabs. Use your right hand for defense.
He's not gonna do that.
Still, it's worth pointing out.
He's not going to listen to you. Yeah, I mean, so he's obviously at contender level.
Totally.
And it just remains to be seen what this means at light heavyweight. Because it just means that he slots that somewhere into the spectrum between, like,
Ankalaev
and Blachowicz, who are like the good ones, and then Yuri.
Yeah.
Who is like, sorry, Yuri, the bad one.
Yeah, so right now, above Ulberg in the rankings, he's currently at number 7 as of this weekend. Above him is Khalil Roundtree, Alexander Rakic, Jan Blachowicz, Jamal Hill, Yuri Prochazka, Magomed Ankalaev, and then Alex the champ. Which one of those look like dangerous matchups? Which ones look winnable?
I probably wouldn't pick him to beat any of them.
Maybe.
I've got to be honest, but
Jamal Hill? You wouldn't pick him to beat Jamal Hill?
I don't know.
I think he'd beat Jamal Hill.
Yeah, maybe. Yuri, he would certainly beat Yuri up a lot. I don't know whether I'd pick him to beat him.
Yeah. Getting
like, just
cornered.
Look at the difference between their fights with Oezdemir.
Exactly. And getting cornered that much by Oezdemir and getting like put into purely defensive positions right up against the fence. If you're going to allow that to happen, you're in trouble against Yuri.
Yeah. But it's the fact that, like, Ulberg also just convincingly beat Oezdemir.
Right.
The whole fight, whereas Oezdemir was utterly kicking the shit out of Yuri.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to really like pick him as beating any of these guys, but if he did, I wouldn't be super shocked.
No, it's light heavyweight. I mean, none of these guys are rock solid
it's
themselves.
Like the spectrum is the spectrum from like the bad one to the good one is not particularly. It's not particularly huge.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm not really sold on Ulberg. I mean, it's undeniable he belongs in that company, but
yeah, he's just another one of them.
Pretty much, yeah.
He's just going to be like Jamal Hill, where he'll get an impressive win, and then he'll probably lose by doing something incredibly stupid.
Yeah, and I just
looking dreadful.
I just get the feeling his style is particularly prone to lose to some of the more confident and aggressive top-level fighters. He just really thinks he's like a slick counterpuncher a lot of the time. And
I mean, but to his credit, that is generally something that Volkan Oezdemir is actually good at doing.
Punching through a counterpunching game?
He is generally quite good at just thrashing people who have...
It is true.
...come to fight under the understanding that all fights at light heavyweight will be directionally aimless, one shot at a time kickboxing matches. For example, his last fight.
Yeah.
And Johnny Walker expected that exact thing, and Volkan Oezdemir simply obliterated him.
Obliged and obliterated.
So yeah, I mean, he's past... Wait a minute, he's passed the sternest pressure test in the division. Apart from the champion. Here we go.
Well, Yuri Prochazka, that's the other one.
He's not really a pressure test, though, is he? Especially not now. He's just a...
Well, that's true. It remains to be seen what he looks like after this run, but...
He's just an inane violence test.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
So yeah, okay, so he's a title contender.
Yep. I suppose you're right.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it.
That's light heavyweight for you, folks.
I guess Magomed Ankalaev, pressure counterpuncher.
Oh, that's true. Ankalaev will cook him with some slow pressure.
Yeah. Ankalaev is actually good. He would presumably crush him.
But we didn't have any questions about that anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. So, overall, pretty solid night of fights. There was, of course, decent. All the Road to UFC stuff that nobody cared about, including the UFC. But main card was looking good on paper, and I think it more or less delivered. I thought these were all, there was some variety. They weren't all the most satisfying version of what they could have been, but they were mostly pretty good. And the main event, once again, one of the best 5-round fights of the year so far.
Yeah.
I say so far. We're almost at the end of it. It's going to be in the Handy's contention for best fight of the year for me, because I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, as you said, just a pretty solid main card. Had some upsets, had some finishes.
Yeah.
Had some subs, had a wheel kick. Good stuff.
Now, Phil, before we wrap up, I have a statement to read here. I apologize for comparing fighters who are essentially in the... I apologize. Sorry, my handwriting is bad. I'm struggling to read this. I would like to apologize to MMA fighters across the world for saying that they deserve to get paid badly, that they should eat shit, that they're pathetic, and that I want them to suffer. Obviously, MMA fighters are not victims of domestic abuse. In fact, many of them themselves, MMA fighters' wives are victims of domestic abuse. All the same, to say fuck you MMA fighters for licking the taints, ball sacks, and other parts of that region of men like Dana White and Donald Trump. To say that that means that they are enabling and therefore deserving of the treatment they receive from these people is unfair and wrong of me. It's time for me to listen and learn. Thank you.
Wow. From the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really no PR polish on that one. I had to get that one out there. Last week, I was feeling my oats.
You crossed a line, Connor.
I crossed a line. I was frustrated with the MMA fighters. And I said, God damn it, just stand up for yourselves. And, maybe they have to hit rock bottom like a lot of people stuck in abusive relationships and really realize that they're in danger before something changes. But until that time, I guess I'm going to have to look at them sucking off Elon Musk at a fucking pay-per-view and continue to say, I hope you get a bigger piece of the pie. I've got my principles and I stand by them. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. You can also find me over there on Blue Sky. A little bit of a burgeoning MMA community happening on that site. We'll see what happens. But you can find me at King Typo on that platform. Please check out the Patreon for the first of 2 episodes of Heavy Hanka that will close out the end of this month. And that's it. We'll talk to you next week when we will be looking forward to... What are we looking forward to? Oh, it's
something that did not stick in my mind. It's okay. Yeah, it's Pantoja Asakura.
Pantoja Asakura. It's not a great card, if I recall correctly. But hey, we don't have to talk about it yet. So until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.
It is the one where they bumped Sterling versus Ibluev so that Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie could be on the main card.
Oh my god. Maybe they should just have a debate. Bryce and Kron.
Right?
Just have a meeting of the minds instead of a fight. What's the point in fighting? I want to hear these guys' ideas.
It would be amazing.
Oh god.
That is the best kind of conspiracy theory, when like 2 conspiracy theorists meet and then have to
find out where their crazy aligns and where it conflicts.
Yeah, well, and then like, yeah, one of them's like, obviously the moon landings were faked by the CIA.
What?
And then the other one's like, what do you mean the CIA?
It was the Jews!
It was the Jews!